we're super excited. We got a special guest with us today, one Avery Braxton of ABC 24. He was kind enough to let me come blabber on his show a couple of weeks ago talking about Grizzly injuries. And so we're returning the favor. I'm super excited to hear what he thinks about the Grizzlies summer so far. And Drew, he had a sit-down interview with Cedric Coward, so we're excited to talk about that. But let's dive right in, not waste any more time.
Are you going to leave him in timeout, Rusty? Jeez.
My computer is killing it today. It is awful.
Good
Lord
Lord.
have mercy.
I'll put you
This is what happens.
Avery.
We try to have a professional show. Again, we got Avery Braxton here today. Thanks for joining us today, man. I appreciate you joining. Even if we're not professional, we're laggy and we're slowed down, man.
Don't even feel bad about it, bro. I'm looking around and I'm looking up at the bars on the top and bottom. I'm like, this looks pretty nice. Don't even feel bad. Listen, I was trying to have Jessica Benson on my show on Monday, right? And we could not get her IFB call-in system right. We had to scrap it. So sometimes stuff happens, you know what I'm saying? I will not hold it against y'all because even with the backing and the resources that y'all think I got with the local news, we still have crap that happens. So don't even feel bad.
I mean, we're running on like the beta version of StreamYard here. Apparently I've got Windows 98 on this Mac, which is about 10 years old. And so, you know what, we're doing it live here. So tell the good people what you got. So talk about your show. I was on it a couple of weeks ago, live at noon on the 24th floor. Tell folks about your show, kind of your role at ABC 24 and who you are.
I am the sports anchor for ABC 24. We obviously are a local news station, so you will see me, live in the 6 o'clock doing sports on ABC 24. But we also do a podcast, sports show, very similar to what you guys got going on, called The 24th Floor. Do it on Mondays and Thursdays at noon. And that show is, a lot of the reporting that we will do during the week, but also just opining, giving opinion and commentating on things that are going on. And so we've been doing that since about October. And it's been cool. I mean, we've had, like you mentioned, I had Cedric Coward on my show not too long ago. We just talked to Ryan Mitchell, who was drafted, a Memphis native who was drafted to the St. Louis Cardinals last week. And as a special something I got cooking up for tomorrow, I got Quincy Wilson, the Olympian, who just came to Memphis a couple weeks ago. So he's going to be on tomorrow. So some cool stuff. Fun show, a little different. I feel like I'm flexing all the muscles these days.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's just start at the beginning then, because I would like to hear about the newest St. Louis Cardinals draftee as well, because I'm excited about that. I
bet you are.
But let's start with Cedric Coward. First impressions, I think everybody had of him was just like amazing, like just the person that Cedric Coward is. Did you get that same vibe? What was your vibe after the interview was over?
You talk to a lot of these athletes who are fresh out of high school, fresh out of college, and you immediately get the sense of like who has had some media training and who has not, and maybe whose parents are a little bit more involved and who are not. And I will say with Cedric Coward, like people were saying that you get the sense that you're talking to like a CEO. Like is a guy who is very put together, very much knows who he is, very much understands sides of the game that I feel like it takes other folks maybe 2-3 years to kind of figure out. And I don't just mean that from like a dealing with media perspective, but I think from a like dealing with humans that are not, necessarily in your immediate peer circle or anything like that. He just seemed like a guy who knew who he was and very much understands what he is walking into as a professional. And that's, I think, for any organization, athletes or, athletic organizations notwithstanding, I think you want somebody to come into your organization, kind of understand what you're about and, present themselves in a very professional and put together manner. And that's what I got from him, notwithstanding the basketball side of things.
Yeah,
that's bad news for us because professional and put together is
not Memphis, right? There's other Memphis vibe, right?
That's not. Yeah, that's not.
Let me tell you this, just on one of the comments that you made, and I kind of thought this as well, is a lot of times you could tell who who has a good camp around them. And it feels like Cedric's got a good camp around them, because you look at the introductory press conference that he sat through, he hit all the talking points. He said blue collar. He said hard worker. He said Tony Allen. He said defense. Like, you could tell somebody sat him down and was like, all right, this is your talking points. This is endears you to the city. This is a small market team. It's important that you get endeared with the fans. And you compare that to Ace Bailey, who obviously has bad people in his ears. So I thought that was my first thing from your interview, from the introductory press conference, and just from the things leading up to the draft. Just seems like he's surrounded himself with good people.
Yeah, no, I would completely agree with that. He talked a lot about his family being around him, specifically his mother and father. He talked about, wanting to buy his grandparents' house out there, and I believe it's in Washington, or excuse me, in Fresno, California. And so you can tell that he does have a camp around him that is very much invested in his success as a person, not necessarily as a basketball player, but those things kind of go hand in hand, right? And then even, I think that it also extends to like the coaching staffs that he's had around him at, Willamette and Eastern Washington, and then, Wazoo. And I think the organization that you're walking into with the Grizzlies is one where they are very supportive of you. I walk around with those communications folks all the time as I'm doing my reporting and doing my job, and they are the most helpful, respectful people that you're going to meet, and they want to see you win. So I think from all sides, he is very well taken care of in terms of his camp.
Well, and that makes 2 for 2 for us, right? Because something about these Washington State guys coming to the league, being mature, being kind of ahead of the game, we're going back to back with that, because we saw Jalen Wells last year come in with a good head on his shoulders, obviously a good camp around him as well. It must just be something that comes out of those Wazoo Cougars. But you did interview Gigi as well. You've talked with Gigi. You've been around Gigi. He's a guy that has kind of been a slower development, right? Like, he came in with all the expectations in the world, and he was crushing it in his rookie year, and then had kind of a rough campaign last year. Talk about Gigi's maturation over this year, what we've seen in Summer League, and him talking and kind of what he needs to do to continue on that track.
I think sometimes you can't minimize what it means to maybe have a little bit of a change of scenery, right? And I think for Gigi, the change of scenery is not the city or the team, it is the coaching staff. Coming into that second year, I think he might have had a little bit of an inflated sense of himself, right? Because the rookie year that he was walking into a situation where he was, the primary ball handler doing all this scoring because they were decimated by injuries. And so when you come into that second year, you're expecting things to maybe go a little bit of a different way. You don't necessarily expect yourself to be, the go-to scorer, because you have a Jaren that are back in the mix. Desmond Bain comes back. You have veterans above you. But I think Gigi's expectations and what the reality of the situation was maybe just didn't match up as well. And I think we saw that he had some very real steps forward that he had to take with different parts of his game, especially defensively. And so it got to a point where the Grizzlies were trying to win games. It is a business. At the end of the day, they are in the business of winning. And I don't think Gigi was contributing to winning in such a way that Taylor Jenkins felt like he could rely on him at the stage that he was at. And that was probably an especially hard pill to swallow when you see a Jalen Wells, who's a rookie, right? Even though Jalen is older than him, but a rookie who steps into the starting lineup in the first 5 games. Like, I don't know how tough that would be for me, right? If somebody came into my job and all of a sudden, they're the big shiny new toy. And so, shout out to my colleague Drew Hill with the Daily Memphian. I believe it was him who wrote about just the maturation process that Gigi realized he had to go into, right? To go into this third year. He wanted to go be in Summer League. In a third year, which is pretty unusual. You just don't really see third year guys do it, even though, again, Gigi's the youngest guy on the Summer League roster, right? So it's very weird paradox of things. But when I sat down with him the summer after his rookie year, he just talked about, you're not at this stage because you can't play the game. You get to this stage and you stick at this stage because you figure out what keeps you there. And I think what we've seen in Summer League is he understands that defensively he's going to have to get better. And I still think, there were steps forward, but he still has a pretty good way to go defensively. But you're seeing him attack and be an offensive player in a different way than I think we've seen him the last couple of years try to be. Very much more aware of, being able to pass the ball, making quicker decisions, not being a black hole, so to speak, on the offense.
I think the biggest thing we saw this summer was he got back to being like a 2-dribble creator, right? Within 2 dribbles, he either passed or took a shot. And that's where GG's lane is. I think he was forced into a role last year that doesn't fit his skill set, being more of a facilitator and trying to do more. But if we can get him in that Desmond Bane type role where it's a handoff and you take 2 dribbles and you get a layup, or it's a kick out 3, then I think that's GG's sweet spot on this team, especially on that second lineup. And now you got Ty Jerome, you got some other guys around him that can carry some of that load. I think it looks like it already has and will continue to take some of the pressure off the mental side of GG's game.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Twomasi Isolo is going to be a breath of fresh air, I think, a little bit for GG. And I think he just I think he needed his expectations reset just a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah. I think that's, being a professional is a learned trait. A lot of times, you look at guys like Cedric Coward and Jalen Wells, and you see that their production and their willingness to fit into a role without having much ego. And then you think about the age they were when they're drafted, and you compare that to GG Jackson, and you could tell the difference in the folks that were 5-star, 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 one and done in college, and then something doesn't go their way, how you respond to it, versus a guy like Jalen Wells who, played his way through college, Sacramento State to Washington State to just, because of injury being thrown into a starting job and not letting that moment be too big for you. You're not overanalyzing. It's a learned behavior, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I think that what we could be looking back in a couple of years and think that this 24-25 season that GG Jackson struggled in could have been a blessing in disguise and a learning point and a real inflection point in his career. And I really hope that that's the case. But to think about Jalen Wells and Jalen Wells and Vince Williams Jr. and all these guys, that seems like the Grizzlies have a type when they draft. And they went again in the second round with 2 older dudes, with Jamal Meshack and Devon Small, and 2 seasoned guards who do in Meshack has 1 elite trait as a defender, and then Javon Small, who does a lot of stuff really good, high energy guy. What's your first opinion on those? I think everybody just is in love with Meshack, but do you see them being anything more than 2 ways, or is it still just like maybe a year or so away from being real contributors to this team?
I think I do see a pathway, I think maybe more for Meshack than Small to be a real contributor in the future, just because he very much has those prototypical skills, right? But I think what we know about the Grizzlies is that they do not treat their 2-way players and really even their G League Memphis Hustle players as like, this is the gulag and you're going to stay here and stick here forever, right? I mean, we've seen it with Scottie Pippen Jr. He was on a 2-way, got that full contract. We saw it with Vince Williams. He was on a 2-way, got that full contract, because when they prove that they can be real contributors, they are rewarded with that. And I think if you're in the Grizzlies organization as a guy who is trying to, earn his keep and survive in the league, I think the Grizzlies have to be one of those teams that you have to be excited to be in the organization for, because it does feel like if I perform at a high level, then I am going to be able to have a real chance to be on a main roster. And so, yeah, I think with Meshack in particular, because of his length and his defensive capability, I think he is the more likely, if he does get the 2-way contract, to be on the main roster maybe a year from now or further into the season. Javon Small, I feel like, I really don't understand what the Grizzlies' kind of infatuation with these smaller guards are when it comes to the G League and the 2-way system, because it doesn't seem like they pan out very often. I mean, we've seen it with Jacob Gilliard, who was on the 2-way, played with the upper roster for a little bit, especially that same year with GG Jackson. And then we saw at the same time with Yuki Kawamura, who proved to be fan favorite for sure, and certainly can give you some exciting moments. But it just never felt like he was really going to have a shot at playing in the league. So I love watching him. I'm following his journey. He's with the Chicago Bulls now. He's going to wear number 8. I'm like, I love that for him, right?
Yeah. Hey, real quick, I hate to interrupt because we're on such a roll with this, but I do have some.
Man, I'm just here.
I've got some breaking news. Your colleague, as you mentioned earlier, Drew Hill, tweeted out about 10 minutes ago that the Grizzlies are hiring Darnell Lazar as an assistant coach. He was a video production or video coordinator for the Grizzlies from 2018 to 2019. He was assistant with the Pelicans last season, and he worked specifically with the big man. So he was a post coach working with Yeez Misi and helping with his development, which turned out pretty good. I mean, Misi had a pretty strong year and was in the running for the Rookie of the Year candidate last year. So, Lazar was on this team kind of in that transition time, right? Coming out of Grit and Grind into Grizz Next Gen. So it's interesting that we go back to that, but the track record with Misi is great. And if he can bring that to Memphis and help develop, I almost said Zebo, Zach Edey, and help, almost said Zach Randolph, Zach Edey's development, if he can help with the development of Jock Landale and some of these other guys that we've got coming in, PJ Hall, I mean, I think this could be a good hire for the Grizzlies. Avery, are you familiar? Or you remember Lazar when he was on this team?
I'm not too familiar with him. I got here in Memphis in 2021, so I'm not super familiar. Obviously, I am familiar with the Grit and Grind Grizzlies, right? And if you move to this city, you better get familiar with them real fast, right? So I am mildly familiar, but I mean, I think the point that you made is perfect. Is a perfect one because. On the front court side of things, the big man side of things, this is a team that is very young, right? With the exception of Jaren Jackson Jr., of course. And so the sooner they can get a Zach Edey up to speed, a PJ Hall up to speed, a Jock Landale up to speed, and even, Santi Aldama to a certain extent, even though he's more of a finesse wing-ish kind of big. The sooner you get all those guys up to speed, the better this team is going to be. And I know the Grizzlies don't want to be in they don't want to be in the gulag again. I use that word or limbo. They don't want to be in limbo for super long. So the sooner you get those young bigs up to speed, the better.
Yeah, exactly. He played it. Looks like he played at Duke in college. He's got some playing background. Like, I think he could be a good hire again if he can help. Like, if he pulls Misi out of the mire and the muck, and he can pull Edey out, I think that's going to be great. But you were talking about Yuki being a fan favorite. Yuki was awesome, but he wasn't more than a mascot, right? Last year, Drew and I were at the opening night.
That's a little harsh. I got a point.
Harsh. I'm coming around.
Hold it down for us 5'8" guys. Come on, man.
Hey, I wish I was 5'8", Avery. I wish. I'd do anything for 5'8".
Listen, I love Yuki. Like the night at Orlando for the home opener, Drew, we were there, and when Yuki came in, we went just as nuts as anybody. But it's going to be nice to have guys on those two-way deals in Meshack, in Small, and PJ Hall, who could be high-level contributors, because like Meshack has a role on this team being the guy that can get a stop. Javon Small plays awful similar to Ja Morant. There was a couple times in Summer League where he did a couple like jab step hezzies and some decels that looked just like 12 out there on the court. And then PJ Hall is a bruising type center. He's 6'10", wish he was a little taller, but he's an aggressive rebounder. And so it's going to be nice to get some guys on this team that can contribute from those two-way spots, and not the Zion Pullins or the Colin Castletons or the Yuki Kawamuras of the world that can actually help us win basketball games.
Yeah, I think that's the idea too. I think if you're a Javon Small in particular, you're looking at Scottie Pippen Jr. and you're like, I need to embody that. Not necessarily the play style, because every player is themselves, right? You don't want them to, I'm trying to be Scottie Pippen Jr., but you got to look at the way you got to look at his work ethic and what he was able to do. You got to look at his ability to fit into the system and whatever is being asked of him. Because what we know about 12, I mean, as much as I love 12, he does have injury concerns. There have been times where he's been not on the floor for extended periods of time. And so that two-way point guard spot is one that is valuable, because more likely than not, you are going to get pulled up for several games. So I think Javon Small in particular, of the three of them, is going to have a pretty unique role. I think PJ Hall probably sees the floor the fastest just out of necessity.
Sure.
I like all three.
Yeah.
We still don't have the third one filled, by the way. I mean, we're assuming it's Jemai Meshack.
We're assuming it's going to be Meshack.
That is not set in stone yet.
Yeah, it's starting to get a little weird around that, to be honest with you. I thought that was a pretty much done deal, locked in stone when you release Zion Pullen, because the truth of the matter is that the Grizzlies and Zach Kleiman and the hustle and all the development and scouting guys do an incredible job of assigning these two-way guys to contracts that work out. You know, they see these as an extension of the team as a 16th, 17th, and 18th roster spot, and Zion Pullen became a casualty to a positional need, because whether we liked it or not, like Zach Edey is our big guy and he's down, and Jaren Jackson Jr. is down, and Brandon Clark is coming off injury. You had to have somebody that could be that. And the emergence of Jemai Meshack, we assume, also contributed to Zion Pullen being released off of his two-way deal, but that hasn't been done yet. So is it starting to get a little weird? Is this still just like CBA weirdness that you've got to fit it in like after a certain date thing, or is it just going to happen like we think it's going to happen?
I think it's going to happen. I think they might. I don't know how much more proving of himself he can do, right? Because they're going to have to fill that third one sooner rather than later. And outside of them, maybe trying to find another big that can go along with the PJ Hall. I just don't know who else down there they would want to go with outside of, like I said, maybe in Armando Bacot, who played well. Not to the level that PJ Hall was playing at, but played decent, played solid. And if you're looking at the big man roles right now, I could see them going that direction. But I think Jemai Meshack is – I think, in my opinion, you want Jemai Meshack around Jalen Wells, around Cedric Coward, around GG Jackson as much as possible. And I think the best way you do that is putting him on a two-way.
Well, and you also get him around KCP, who's who's a vet leader, a 3-and-D, like knows my role type guy. And if we've got KCP now, and again, this is pie in the sky visions of grandeur. I own that, but like you got KCP now, but then you got Jemai Meshack that just kind of follows in his footsteps. He's a shorter player, but he's got that long wingspan who's just a menace defensively. And so KCP could be the perfect kind of niche for Jemai Meshack to fall in, like develop a really good three-point shot and then defend the hell out of everybody that gets the basketball. And you have a home in the league and on this team. And so to me, KCP is going to be key for this team with his experience and his leadership. And I want Jemai Meshack around that, because he can pour into him and show him what it takes to be a 3-and-D type specialist in the NBA.
Well put. Yeah, I completely agree. Sorry, I didn't know Uncle Buck was going to jump in there. I'm just
good.
No. Hey, listen. Sometimes you just gotta let Rusty talk. Just
we just
no.
You
just gotta let it sit. Sometimes you gotta let it sit just a little bit.
All right, we did have Avery. I told you we may have a couple questions for you, so we'll end it with a couple questions. We got one from Edward. We got one from our friend down under. Wayno from Australia. We'll end with his, but Avery, ask Avery from Edward, who do you like at the starting three? We're assuming KCP, Jalen Wells, Cedric Coward. These are the guys you're going to choose from. Do you have a preference?
I think KCP probably starts the year, and I say that because I think Jalen Wells might be at the 2.
Yeah, I think so.
And so
I think that's where I'm landing too.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at your starting 5, it's probably going to be some combination of Ja, Wells, KCP, probably Brandon Clark, and because of necessity, I would see it being PJ Hall or KCP, Santi Aldama at the 4, and you might be playing some kind of small ball, I think, and Brandon Clark's your 5. I know that's not ideal, but I agree with the point you were just making. I think KCP is going to bring a defensive understanding. He's going to bring a role that he knows exactly what it is and how to play it, a veteran presence to that starting lineup. And I think that allow Jalen Wells to move to maybe more of his more natural position, which was the 2. He was playing that 3 because, again, he stepped into it over what we thought was going to be a Vince Williams or a GG Jackson.
Right.
And he wasn't going to play the 2 over Desmond Bane. It just wasn't going to happen. So that's kind of where I see that going.
And listen, we're pro Brandon Clark. So if Brandon Clark gets minutes at the 5, like that's okay. I mean, he's undersized, but
undersized, but he gets the job done.
Ain't that right, Avery? Ain't that right? Another one coming from Edward. You may have to tell me what this is about.
Okay. Shout out my boy. Shout out to my boy. Noobs do indeed run the world, sir. And I'll leave that as a if you know, you know. They don't know. So,
I mean, you don't know us anything.
Me and you know.
You don't know us anything. All right. Last question. This is from our friend down under. This is Wayno. And I kind of want to just kind of make this a little bit more broad than what he has. He says, are you a Hoops fan? And if so, where did it all start? I want to broaden this out. You said you got to Memphis in 2021. Where'd you come from before that? How'd you land here? What are you about?
Yeah, no, to answer Wayno's question, I am 100% a Hoops fan. Love basketball. I am from Atlanta, Metro Atlanta area, Fayette County, for those who are more familiar with the state of Georgia. And so that's where, a lot of that started. But Uncle Buck was like, would it be hard for you to root for the Grizzlies if they moved to Nashville? I was like, I root for the Grizzlies professionally because I work in Memphis, but I am an Atlanta Hawks fan. So, I am excited about what's going on in the A right now with KCP and Trey, what that combination is going to look like. And, the Thunder down under, Wayno, with Dyson Daniel being Australian. I am excited. The Great Barrier Thief, which I think is a fantastic.
That's a good one.
That's
a
solid.
Good one.
That's solid.
I bet you did not want to talk about. It was really hard for you to talk about that Memphis Atlanta game where Dyson Daniels ripped Dez for the game winning layup at the buzzer. That was really hard for you to come in even keel that day at work.
It's easier to hide than you think, because when you get into the space that I'm in, where we're supposed to be very straight-laced, objective, that kind of thing, it's easier to kind of I gotta keep it under wraps. But they gave me a platform like you guys' show where it's all right, I can talk about it. So I make Atlanta references on my show all the time. I don't feel bad about it. That's what y'all hired me to do.
That's it.
There's a synergy between the two cities, I believe.
Yeah,
there's
a similarity.
Yeah, for sure,
100%. There's a soul, there's a music, there's a flavor to both cities, and that's why it's a fun rivalry with Atlanta, because we feel like we're both kind of in that same vein. And so, Avery, man, this has been an absolute blast. Thanks for hanging out with us, man. It's been a lot of fun. We appreciate you being here. Tell them again where they can find you, when your shows are. I've got your handle on here at Brax_Avery, but tell them where the show is and all about yourself.
Yeah, so we're live on YouTube Mondays and Thursdays at noon. You can also watch that at abc24.com/watch, which will take you basically to the station's website. You can watch it through there. We're also live. We have a Roku app, smart TV app. Just search for 24 Plus or ABC 24. It should come up. Mondays and Thursdays at noon, we're live. And of course, you can follow me on socials. All socials is at Brax_Avery. Appreciate you guys having me. It's been a lot of fun.